The latest General Handbook update is out. They once said, it was a couple years ago, that what the church is, what you need to listen to are the scriptures, the words of the living prophets, and the handbook. And I think that's true. That's really what the gospel is. If you want to know what it is, that's it. So reading the handbook is revelatory. The latest General Handbook updates include an AI-powered search assistant. Now, I kind of covered, I think maybe somewhere else, the beta version of this, but here it is. It's out for everybody to try. So as directed by the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 Apostles, the General Handbook serving in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints continues to be updated as needed. Little tiny tweaks here and there. Along with the most recent content updates, there's a new search assistant feature that's been added to the General Handbook on the Gospel Library app version 7.2 and on churchofjesuschrist.org to help church leaders. I think that's kind of key, and members find answers to their questions. The search assistant can analyze users' questions and summarize potentially relevant information found in the handbook. Because the assistant is powered by artificial intelligence, in parentheses AI, users should verify responses using the links provided by the assistant. So basically, instead of having to go through that handbook, which, oh my gosh, how many sections and subsections of subsections does it have? You can simply use this new AI-powered chat help to ask a question. Can I be sealed to my second husband if I've been divorced from my first wife? Second, those kind of questions. The AI is going to go out and it's going to find the answer. It's going to give you a summary of the answer, and then it's supposed to put the relevant section. And the caveat here is just don't listen to the AI, but make sure you go and check the section. Well, who's going to do that? The reason that you're using the AI is because you don't want to go in there and check the section. So I think it's very interesting that leaders will be using this. Now, we've done
an episode. It's like in the introduction of every single Cliff Notes brochure, which is reading the Cliff Notes brochure is no substitute for reading the actual book.
Yeah, that's exactly
I know because I read so many of those Cliff Notes without reading the actual book.
I passed so many AP courses only on Cliff's Notes. I can't even tell you. But yeah, so we did an episode on Mormonish a little while ago about AI and how it's not what you think it is. And when it mixes with religion, things can get really interesting. And our friend Troy, who really knows what he's talking about, he says, I asked his opinion of this new, chat AI help with the handbook. And he said, things could get weird if users of the AI start thinking of it as being more accurate or truthful than they do the leadership. And this can happen. There it is, an instant answer. You might use that in a talk. You might use that anywhere. AI hallucinates. I hope you guys all understand this because it is trying its very best to give the user what it wants. When you ask it a question, it starts hallucinating the answer. Very layman's terms, it starts going out and seeking what it thinks you want to hear. But it has no way of actually knowing if its answers are truthful. It has to rely on outside confirmation or consensus for that, if that makes sense. So the problem is the accuracy of the information that you're going to be getting. And even over on some faithful social media.
I don't really care about the accuracy as long as it's telling me what I want to hear.
Well, and that is true. This is what I'm saying. But when it comes to questions of religion or the rules or points of order in the church, this could get very interesting. And even on faithful social media, people have been raising this question because a lot of people use this to write talks, even though we've been warned against this lazy learner, right, by Elder Bednar. They're using it to provide outlines for talks. I've even seen quotes kind of fabricated from general authorities. They sound right. They sound really close, but when you look them up, they're not correct. So even here on faithful social media, somebody asked the question, is it right to answer scriptures related questions with AI? What would you do if you see someone in the church asking ChatGPT or Gemini questions to answer questions asked during discussions, maybe an institute class, elders quorum, other classes entirely? Personally, I think it contradicts the primary purpose of AI, faith in Christ. And for a spiritual growth, it's unacceptable. This is just me speaking my mind. So they asked the question, and other people kind of brought this up. They said, again, LLMs, large language models, hallucinate a ton. One should not rely on them for answers to anything, especially having to do with religion. Exactly. LLMs are language models. They're trained to generate text. They're not necessarily trained to check for text's accuracy or logic. So everybody kind of sees the problem with this. It reminds me of those AI pastors that we've reported on in the newscast where they start kind of going rogue and thinking they're ordained. And I don't know, it's only going to get interesting. Were you going to say something, RFM?
Well, AI, I don't know. I just think that this is all a huge mistake.
Yeah.
And that this is, the prophets, the science fiction authors, for the last 180 years, I'll say 80 years, 75 years, try not to be contradicted on this, have been telling us this is going to happen.
Yep.
They've been warning us.
They have been warning us, and yet now they're using it. They've let the Trojan horse in. Let's just say that. So
it's like, who thinks this is a good idea? Have they not seen 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Apparently not, or they didn't take it seriously, I think. So another interesting update to the handbook, and I'm going to have one of you guys read this because I lost my notes on it and my slides are like this big. What happens to somebody who misuses personal data? This is in the handbook. Look how interesting this is. RFM, do you want to read this, or Bill, whoever can see it better?
Well, it's hard for me to say if I can see it better than Bill, but I'm happy to read it.
Please do.
Misuse of personal data includes deliberately entering false information in church records, or intentionally using or sharing personal data for non-church purposes. Oh, who among us hasn't done that from time to time? If a person with access to church systems has misused personal data, promptly notify the Data Privacy Office at churchofjesuschrist.org. In serious cases, when you have misused personal data publicly, in serious cases, the stake president may counsel with the area presidency, holy crap, about whether a membership council or other action is necessary. Leaders consider the action taken with the personal data, whether the misuse of personal data was a one-time event or a repetition, whether rectifying steps have been taken, and the person's level of remorse. Always pretend you're sorry. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. The position held by the member, with the idea apparently that the higher you are, the harder you fall. In some cases, the first presidency may direct that the membership record of a person who has misused personal data be annotated. Whoa, you're getting the scarlet letter A for annotated. This would prevent him or her from holding callings with privileged access to personal data. So we've got a new annotation. It's always a happy and exciting day in the church.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be stamped by AI, but I just thought this was extremely aggressive. I mean, there are other things people can do in the handbook that don't have this kind of aggressive approach. And it made me think of what we covered on the newscast a while ago, where somebody had gotten the ward list or the stake list and sent out a letter. Do you remember this? This happens every once in a while about truth claims and things like that. So I wonder if that's what they're talking about. But this is right there in the handbook. They are going to crack down. If you think that you're going to send out a wedding announcement, you know, I know people that have used it for this from the ward list, you might get annotated. Any thoughts on that?
Is there an annotation for financial fraud by the top 15?
Yeah, no. It's just using personal. Well, and that's a good question because Elder Ballard, that's right, did perhaps allegedly look at some of the financial information.
About the SEC and
that too.
That whole fiasco.
Yeah. I don't know what it means or how far it goes, but they're certainly doubling down on misuse of personal information, which is what makes this next thing very interesting to me. So,
Rebecca, can I just comment that that's possible that is being done on the last slide for liability issues, that there's been something that's happened where somebody's accessed not personal, but church stuff, church lists of people, use it in some way that ended up being actionable. Okay. So they want to be on record saying, don't do it, so that, we did what we could, right? We told them you can't do this. If that's the case, and I don't know that it is, but if it is, it's a stark contrast to the effort they will go to not be sued, okay, over this stuff with data, whereas it's open season on kids in the church.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be any, it's willy-nilly, right? And again, this might put an end or a dent in affinity fraud, right? If you can't contact all your ward members and tell them about your latest MLM, maybe that's not going to go so well. So, but what I thought was really interesting, another part of it, this is all about data, accomplishing your divinely appointed responsibilities with the Member Tool app. So here is how you can access some of the data and what it is okay to use it for. I thought this was very interesting. So it's divided into 4 principles. I can't remember which apostle stated these, but the purpose of the app helps you fulfill these 4 things that you're trying to do to live a righteous life and live the gospel. So the first thing you can use this Member Tools app for is to find a meeting house. An essential part of living the gospel is attending church where you can gather with your fellow saints. You can use this feature to help you find a meeting house. Okay. So if you wanted to know where somebody attended church and you knew kind of the vicinity where they lived, you could look them up. That's kind of interesting. I can see how that could be problematic in some cases. You can schedule a temple appointment. A simple way to build temple worship into your routine is to schedule the appointment. The My Temple feature quickly redirects you to ordinance schedules that are available. You can make an appointment, find the time slot. Okay, that's good. That seems fine. Number 2 is caring for those in need. Another
Rebecca,
way that
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this temple appointment thing, is that something that there's a certain time when that changed about making appointments to go to the temple? Because the last time I went to the temple, which has been over 10 years ago, but it's not that long ago, there were no appointments. You just showed up and you went and took your position and you were worked through the system and spit out the other end.
No, they have pretty intensive scheduling, and I use it all the time because I like to show people where temples are being built, how many slots are actually available, right? 50, 40, 30, any given hour. And I think what they're trying to do is kind of get an idea of how to sort of plan the sessions, because I know temples sometimes close on certain days. There isn't that much of a need. So I don't know, but you can walk in, but you can also set an appointment, either one.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Kind of interesting, but you can check out how many things are available, and that paints a really interesting picture. Okay. Number 2, caring for those in need. How can you use this data? Your ministering assignment, right? Ministering can be as simple as a thoughtful text or a call, yet it can make a lasting impact. The ministering assignment features allows you to quickly find people you're assigned to minister to and access their contact details. So you can look anyone up. For example, I'm still a member of record, and I have been ministered to many times. Having not attended church, the only thing I can think is that they have used this to look me up. I've gotten birthday texts. I've gotten presents left on my porch, all those kinds of things. So thank you to those sisters who brought me caramel apples. Because that's my favorite.
You had left on your porch, Rebecca?
Caramel apples.
Wow, that's good.
I love caramel apples. I would rather have that than birthday cake. Yeah. So there you go. All right. Anyway, again, questionable, not questionable. I don't know. If it's somebody that hasn't attended church for a long time like me, yet I'm getting texts and I'm getting calls because I'm still on, the rolls. I don't know what you think of that. The temple prayer roll, whether or not you are endowed in the temple, if someone you know is struggling with sickness, any other type of affliction, you can add their name to the temple prayer roll anytime. So you can go into this app and you can put anybody's name there. I could put your name there, RFM.
You could?
I could.
Would you put it down as a Radio Free Mormon?
I would. I could. In fact, maybe I'll do it right now if I knew how to get into the dang app.
Well, how would God know who I really am, though?
God knows all, RFM. You've got to understand that.
He keeps giving me evidence that he doesn't really.
Bill's just shaking his head. He's like, oh my gosh.
It's not prophets who can't see around corners. God can't see around corners.
God can't see around corners. That's it. Okay. So it gets even better. This is so interesting. Number 3, inviting all to receive the gospel. Okay. This is another way to live a righteous life, to live the gospel. And how can this tool help you? Well, first of all, you can introduce friends to the missionaries. When a friend is interested in meeting the missionaries, you can easily help them connect with elders or sisters in the area using the Introduce Friends to Missionaries feature. So you just jump on the app, you get their information, you plug it in, and within, I would say, probably 2 to 3 minutes, there's a missionary right there standing in front of you because they are just living on this app. So that's helpful. Another thing is you can make a group. Teachers and leaders can easily communicate together, and you can put everybody together. Then you can send out mass texts or, mass information or emails. That's helpful if you're trying to put something together. This next one I think is interesting. The directory. Of course, member tools will always be your first stop to finding your directory and reaching out to others. One of the creative ways I have used the member tools directory, said Edwin Sanchez, a bishop in Alta Vista Ward in Puerto Cumumbaro, Venezuela, has been to go through name by name and try to contact members I don't know. Why don't you know them? Because they haven't been coming to church, who were baptized as children or young people and no longer attend church activities. So there you are, going in, somebody who maybe was baptized when they're 8, they're an adult now, and suddenly, ding, they receive a text from this lovely bishop asking them if, they're still interested, if they'd like to come back to church. So I find that very interesting, that you can just go in there and find anybody, as long as they're on record. They probably don't even realize they're on record, and try to contact them.
And ding, it's Edwin again.
Yep. And there it is. That's right. Yeah. No, I know of people that are sent on missions to do that, to find people. And of course, if you try to find people and you can't find them, you let the ward know, and the ward sends those records back to Salt Lake. And we've talked about this before. And that, of course, kind of changes the ratio of attendance in a ward, right? If you can say there are 400 people here we've never seen, those records are gone, poof, then suddenly your attendance is at 70%. So I've said it before, I'd like to see that file in Salt Lake, because I think that's where the true numbers lie, if we can say. All right, last one, Uniting Families for Eternity, Ordinance Ready. This is a way that you can go in and figure out from Family Search, who instantly is ready to take through the temple. Of course, that's a whole nother podcast right there, of how many names are repeats and how many names are mistakes, but you can go in there and say that. And then the final one I thought was great, the Covenant Path Progress. Have you heard of this before, that you can actually chart your progress on the Covenant Path? Uh-oh, he's so overwhelmed, he's muted.
No, I haven't. But that whole story about how when you've left the church, you become inactive and they're trying to find you and you're trying not to be found. Yep. It's like the Mormon version of the most dangerous game.
Ooh, it is kind of. Yeah. But of course, they're doing it for good purposes. Anyway, if you are a new member or someone returning to full activity in the church, the Covenant Path Progress feature provides experience to help strengthen your faith in Jesus Christ. And I couldn't find a graphic, so I found this chutes and ladders, because I figure it's kind of like that, right? Didn't y'all play that? You're going up the ladder, you mess up, you're down the chute. That's kind of how I picture the Covenant Path.
It is. It is. The best thing that can happen to you is to get the Queen Frostine card.
Yeah, I loved Queen Frostine. That's
it's
right.
A mixed metaphor, I know.
I used to play with my little sister, and I would stack the deck. I would put the root beer float right there, like third card in. So we'd go, you, me, you, and oh God, I'm sorry, I won. Yeah, I was that kind of big sister.
I don't know how this keeps happening.
Yeah, I don't know why. I always
lucky, I guess.
Well, give me a quarter. We always played for money. I made her. So anyway, Bill, any final thoughts on data? And then we'll very quickly go to wrap it up with garments.
I only wonder if the day is not far from now when it will be easy to verify somebody and they can have their name removed or resign from the church with just a click of the button.
Yeah, that is missing from that tool, isn't it?
Makes you wonder if that one probably will never come around.
Yeah. Nope. Not as long as you have to be notarized. It's not going to happen. But it seems like that would fit there with everything else.
It's like these spam emails that I get. There's some of them, you go down to the bottom, it says unsubscribe, you're done, no fuss, right? Mm-hmm. Then you get these others that don't even have it on there. I think they're supposed to, where they have this huge wall of text with like a million different little things and tiny little print, and you can't find it. And it's like, I would rather just, delete it when it comes in rather than try and find where this is. And then sometimes it'll take you to a funky page and your malware is, going off with the sirens. Anyway, that's their version of not wanting you to unsubscribe. Therefore, we're going to make it as difficult for you as humanly possible.
Yep, I think there's truth to that. I literally have about 12,000 emails in one of my emails because of that. I just would rather delete if I get around to it instead of trying to find that unsubscribe button. So I do understand that. Anyway, check out that app.
Basically everything I can unsubscribe from.
I think you can actually get tools to help you unsubscribe. So anyway, check out the tool, everybody, and see what you think of it. Okay. And also I wanted to bring up, there is something called LDS bot, and that is a sort of a faithful chatbot, right? It's been fed with faithful information, and you can go in there and ask it gospel questions, and that's run by the B.H. Roberts Foundation. So that's kind of interesting. If you haven't heard of that before, you might want to go check that out. It's kind of
This
fun.
is like an apologetic AI.
Yes, it is. It is. But people like to try to trip it up. People like to try to make it explode, kind of like on Star Trek where they make the robots outthink themselves
Nomad.
and explode. Like Nomad, exactly. I wasn't going to be as geeky as to say the name, but yes, like Nomad. All right.